So my name is Assi, and I'm the Digital Learning Manager at Telefonica UK, that you probably know better as O2. And over the next few minutes, we're going to be discussing and telling you a little bit about how we worked with our millennials in the company to overcome specific challenges. We're going to take you through it, and we're going to tell you about what the actual practical steps we took. One of my problems and my team's problems with going into a lot of the chat series that you go in and you come out and you pump, you say, yeah, we really need to do that, that's excellent. Okay, now what? And we wanted to take it through the process because what we did worked for us, and we think that parts of it might work for you. For me, one of the important things about inclusion and talking about it is to hear from the people who are actually part of the project. So I have with me.
Hi, my name is Serena, and I'm leading on the mobile learning project for our millennials in Telefonica.
And we're going to go through a few things. I've left that mostly for the streaming later, but I think we need to start with who were our people, why was there a challenge, and I'll let Serena talk a little about through the millennials at Telefonica.
Yeah, so Talentum is a program we have at Telefonica that focuses on hiring young talent from across the world to come and work for us. This includes hiring interns, graduates, and apprentices. We call them talentees. Interns join the program for only 12 months and then return to university to finish off their final year of study. Graduates and apprentices join the program for 24 months and then get offered a permanent position at Telefonica. Over 90% of our talentees are under the age group of 25, and our mobile learning project focused on training and supporting this specific target audience during their placement at Telefonica.
And I think that's an important thing, 90% under the age of 25, because it cuts the millennials very, very clearly for us, and it presented a few unique challenges. So why mobile learning? I'm sure that if you've been here yesterday and today, you've probably heard about it. You heard about the technology. You can probably tell me about less time for training, less money for training, the changing learning preferences that we've seen. You want me to do it on what? My desk? I don't have a desktop. All I have is my iPad. The changing preference of I know everything by heart versus I know where to find it. And our specific challenge in O2, where almost half of our population is actually within retail locations, which means they're out on the floor. They don't have access to a PC. When they're using it, it's for an interaction with a customer, which means that we don't actually have, other than mobile, any other possibility to deal with them. Now, our millennial population has an extra challenge over that.
So our millennials, we say talentees, were faced with quite a few unique challenges when they joined their placement at Telefonica. The first one is that they had no work experience. When I joined Telefonica a couple of years ago, I joined as an intern myself, and this was my first full-time professional job. I had not had any exposure to corporate systems and tools, and this can be a huge challenge when you're stepping into a new environment. Another challenge our talentees faced is that they were frequently travelling between sites. As you can imagine, travelling on a busy train with a heavy laptop and no internet is not ideal nor productive when you're travelling for hours on end. A challenge that we had with this group is that we did not have the time to complete an extensive induction plan. Like I mentioned earlier, our interns are only with us for 12 months and then they return back to university. This was not enough time for us to finish such an extensive plan. So due to all these challenges, we decided to try something alternative. But what we needed to understand was, what are their learning needs? What do they want from us?
And it's very important to understand that when we're talking about no work experience, some of the systems that we're using are very, very basic. So I'll throw a question to you and ask, how many of you had formal training on using Outlook or your corporate email system? That's 2, literally 2. And we don't do that yet. When somebody joins the workforce, oh, just send an email, because we do it every day, all day. It's very, very simple. They don't actually have that. And that is something that we cannot and could not take for granted with them. Now, Kathy has just given me the look. One thing that I forgot to say when we started, we want this to flow a little bit differently. So if you have a query about anything that we have, please feel free to stop me, ask questions. my personal flow is that usually if we get the questions during the presentation, when you have them, rather than at the end, I had a question, I just don't remember it, it works much better. So if you have a question, please just interrupt, and I'll give you the microphone, and you can be a rock star. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about what we need with understanding the learning needs, and we'll start with the numbers. So over 60% received no training whatsoever on those systems that we mentioned, things like Outlook and other systems that we use. As a result of that, they didn't hit the ground running, so to speak. About 3/4 of them knew very little about the other areas of the business outside where they were, and about 80% didn't find it very comfortable traveling about the different Telefonica sites, which is very sad if you consider the fact that more than half of them travel almost once a week because they change different roles and work with different individuals. And 2/3, or almost 2/3, were telling us that if they got more training on the systems that we use day to day, they would have been more productive, which goes without saying for us people in training, but it was very interesting to notice that they actually realized that as well. And then we started to look at how we can actually bridge the gap and what they have a relationship with that can help us deliver this information.
So we looked a bit closer at the relationship the Talentees had with their mobile phones. And the figures we got were a bit surprising, but 30% said they sleep with their mobile phones. To me, that's not shocking because I'm one of those people, and I'm sure I'm not the only one here who sleeps with my phone. Just under this, 27% take it into the bathroom with them. We never questioned why, and we don't intend to, but they do.
We're not going to be answering any questions about that.
And 6% would rather lose their hair than their mobile phone.
The rest of us just don't get a choice. So, that is what they were telling us. And the question was for us what to do with it. So we were talking about practical steps. What we actually did was then have a series of interviews with them, trying to understand exactly the learning gap. We did that with a small team. The Talentum population of 2013, which is when we did that, was 130 individuals. So we did it with a very small group. We did a series of interviews, which then allowed us to identify exactly the training needs, the gaps, what didn't they know. We then took that into a survey so that we can go out to the whole population, which allowed us to say, okay, if you would have received training in this, what was concerning to you, and so on. And that was very useful because then we had something which was statistically tangible, and we could say the majority of them would have appreciated Outlook training or whatever it is. From that, we were able to identify what the knowledge gaps are statistically, the ones that will have the most impact, the ones that will deliver the most value. And I've heard in other sessions the question raised, okay, but how do you make them interested? Well, at the end of the day, if it has value, they will use it, and it's as simple as that in a lot of cases. And if you tell them that there's a piece of information on their mobile phone, for example, that will allow them to do a task they do every day faster, there's no reason why they wouldn't look at it. We then created the content. We did it internally, and I encourage you to ask Serena questions about how we created the content and what kind of content we created. But then we came back to our learners, and we came back to our learners to ask them about how it works, what doesn't work. And that was around testing both the user experience on the app itself and the content. In some cases, we made changes, which worked better for them. They asked us to make things more accessible. Some of the things they came back and said, no, that's too long, will not read, TLDR, for those who know that expression. And from there, we were comfortable enough to launch the app. We went specifically for an on-device app because that allowed us to give them offline access. Now, I know that I think we're still peddling the myth of the always connected individual. It's enough to be on the tube, it's enough to be on a train, and you lose connectivity the moment you start reaching any considerable speeds. So having a device that allows us to put everything on it and keep it on it so that I don't need a connection to access it worked well for us. And I think as a result, we've had some very interesting findings. So some questions to ask when you're looking at such a project. Now, let me just pause for a second, ask you questions. How many of you are actually having a challenge with the millennials? How many of you are actually thinking about rolling out mobile learning? So let's start with challenges with millennials. Less than I expected, but that's good. And how many of you are thinking about mobile learning and rolling it out? More than expected, good. So some of the questions that we asked, some of them we were smart enough to know ahead of time that we'll need to, most of them not so. But the things that we can look back and say, these are the things that we needed to ask, revolve around things like the target audience. Who are they? What are their challenges? If you have a group of millennials that are sitting at their desk all day in the same place, working from home, it's very likely that they have access to technology that's a lot easier to use than a phone. They probably don't need it. If you have a group of engineers who are running around and have a device with them but don't have a laptop, that would make more sense. So look at the target audience. Device ownership. So you've decided that you guys need mobile learning. What kind of devices do they have? Sometimes I get, but they don't have access to this, they don't have access to that. All of them today will have mobile phones, which are usually work phone and personal phone. The app, and by using an app, it was relatively easy to tell them, to give them the freedom to install on whatever device they want, but it's an important thing to ask. Nature of the content needed. We tried to keep our stuff very varied, and hopefully I'll have the time to show you in a few minutes. So we kept both videos and guides we could go through. With regards to technology, do you want a single app? Do you want a website? Do you want a single app for everything, or do you want an app store? There are different methodologies. Some will work, some will not. We found, for example, that for a more varied population, a single app makes it easier if they're not very tech-savvy. However, if you have a very tech-savvy population, it will be easier for you if you are going with something more varied, which is the App Store. Online, offline access, maybe all you need is a website. They don't need offline access, ever. But the two most important things is, one, what counts as success? What will it take for you to say, yeah, we did it and it works and we're very happy and now we can do something else? And the last thing is, don't be afraid to ask your learners, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are going to use it. So if you go to them and say, we're thinking of rolling this out, what do you think? We don't like it. Okay, why don't you like it? And so on. It's a dialogue, it's an ongoing dialogue, and it needs to continue. I've put on a few screenshots of the app itself, just in case, but we should be able to show you in a few minutes the app itself. So I'll show you what it looks like on my Android. One of the things that you can see here is that we kept the behavior of the phone. So it's available on iOS, Android, and Windows Mobile. And you can see that on the Windows Mobile, for example, it actually behaves exactly like a Windows Mobile app. So this is not a website that we packaged up. We wanted a real app, so they don't actually go outside of the comfort zone and the apps they're used to. And I will just finish this section by what they were telling us. So after they were using it for 4 months, if I remember correctly?
Yes, in September.
We ran a survey and asked them, okay, so what does this do for you? For us, one of the elements of success was the fact that 45% of them use the app daily. We were very happy with that, definitely one of our measures of success, and more than 84% use it several times a week. When we asked them to describe it in 3 words, you can see this Wordle, things like quick, easy, helpful, simple, useful. If those words were used over all of the training that we offer at Telefonica, I would be very, very happy. But yeah, let me pause now for questions as I connect my phone, and please feel free.
Yeah, to the back. Someone with a question at the back.
No, Serena.
Take the microphone down.
Great presentation, thank you. I suppose I've got a slightly different angle of challenge that I'm facing right now, which isn't my millennials. It's those who aren't millennials, and how do I get them to use technology? So what I'm really interested in is, did you share this with your non-millennial population? And if so, what was their reaction?
Serena, you can answer part of it. I'll just say that some of the stuff here would definitely not constitute mobile learning, and I'll open it in a second. But if you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So before we rolled out the app, we actually carried out a questionnaire with our L&D population as well. And once we created all content, all testing was carried out with the Talentees and L&D themselves, because they're learning specialists, to get their view and their intake on it before we roll it out. So we did get their views on it before we roll this out to the millennials.
But I think the idea, part of the idea is hooking them in. So for example, one of the things they complained to us in the first session was the fact that they came into this world. There are a lot of terms that we use in Telefonica that they've never heard of. And that happens in a lot of companies. We all have our jargon. So in the system, and this is running off my phone at the moment, so it's the real deal, we have a jargon buster, which we included, which means that I can either browse or just type in something. So somebody used such a term, and I typed it in, and now I understand what it is. So think about somebody who's just joined in, saving face, being in there, you know, oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about, of course. Yeah. So that's an important thing, and that's one of the hooks. We've also included, there's a great discussion between mobile learning and support. So one of the things that we did in here is, in addition to that, we spoke about travel. So we have locations, and that will give you information on any of our offices. So for example, our main office, which is in Bath Road, can go in, I can get an address. We even have a shuttle bus, so I'll get all the details. So these are more support mechanisms that will hook them in. Once they're in, actually it becomes a lot easier to say, oh, you know what, I'm on the bus, I don't have anything better to do, so I can go into this item here, which is my learning catalog, and I can look at the different directorates that we have, so the different parts of the business. Or I can go in and I have something about, for example, the different systems. Now, as they become more acquainted with it, oh, I don't actually remember how to use Outlook, so let me just browse here, and I have Outlook. And a lot of the menial tasks that we do regularly and probably automatically, how do I send a meeting invite? Click on that, and you can get either a video, and I'm in plane mode, so it should run. Yeah. So either a video, which runs beautifully, apparently. We didn't test this, apologies. So this will walk me through. There is some audio, but basically it explains click here and click there. And if you think about it, it means that you can run it on your device while still having your Outlook open and doing everything you need on that. The other option is, and again, this is about variety and what's comfortable to them, is this very, very simple sort of like a notebook where we have a few slides which I can browse through, and that tells me step 1, step 2. There's again also audio, but no video. So whatever works for you, and that works. So that hook of creating value is very, very critical in getting it to work. Any other questions? Yeah.
This feels fairly one way, in the way you've described it at least. Is there any plans or for people to connect or help them help each other, etc.?
So in that respect, you're right. It was a way for us to very quickly deliver something that will bridge a gap, something that will solve a problem. We are looking at additional modes of social. We are looking at interactions. We've looked at several things. One is adding more social tools on the online systems. So we have Yammer deployed. When they get a work phone, it will have this app installed in it. They'll just need to put in their login details, but it will also have Yammer. So originally, okay, so this is not, this is a further app. Originally we had Yammer as part of this, and the idea was to link it into it. Unfortunately, Yammer's support when you don't have the app is not so good. So if you try to open Yammer on mobile, that doesn't work. So the experience was not good. We decided to take it off. But we are looking at other ways to integrate it. But I agree, the social element, especially between them, because some of them will learn faster than others. Oh, I'm just moving into your area. What can you tell me about it? Is absolutely a great idea. Yeah, and we're building on this. This for us was level 1, so we're taking it from there. I'll make my way. Just a second.
You're at 20 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I have a question that, since your company basically is used extensively, I mean, by the millennials, then do you learn anything from the millennials that you're recruiting? The reason for my question is that in our organisation, which is the European Commission, basically it's well known for being extremely advanced. But the problem is that we have a lot of senior management who are not familiar with all of this, and some of them have expressed an interest in learning from the millennials that we recruit.
So, first of all, the answer is absolutely yes. We learn, or we try to learn, from everybody that is part of the organization. I think it's absolutely critical. With regards to handing that over to the more experienced parts of the organization, or more experienced individuals, I can tell you that the moment this specifically, because of how it's been engineered, or because of the fact that it's been built around supporting, everybody gets it. So they look at it, no matter the age, and even the older folks would look at it and say, oh, that could have helped me so much if I had it when I started. So that's again, about the value. The whole concept of what we did when we tested the UX and the content was about that. Serena, could you say a little bit more about how we did the testing, why we did the testing, and what we changed as a result?
So with testing, it compromised of first putting them in a quiet room, solely each talentee by themselves, and we introduced them to the app. So they had 5 minutes to have a quick play with it and become familiar with it. We then asked them to carry out very specific tasks in the app, and we monitored how they did that, the routes they went down, and how long it took them to carry out certain things. So for example, we asked them to search for the jargon 4G to see how they would communicate with the app. And later to this, we got them to fill in a feedback form based on their experience from using the app. Using all the responses from the questionnaire, we then fine-tuned the user experience before we actually launched in September.
So that's the answer to that. Definitely listen to them and learn from them. Any other questions?
We've got 5 minutes, Assi.
Okay. Right, so I think, yeah, sorry, yeah, you go ahead.
Could you talk a bit more about the content creation that you undertook?
So yeah, I think part of the work around this for us was a learning experience. So you know what will work, what will not work. But that was your field.
Yeah, so myself and someone else on the team created all the content ourselves in-house, and it was all created in HTML5. So we began by building a few templates, and we used those templates to build upon more. The first thing we did was create the videos, which Assi just showed you, and we did that simply by doing a screen recording. So we opened up Outlook and we screen recorded how you do a certain task, like book a meeting room. And then we got a member of the team to do a screen recording, and then using Windows Media Player, we combined that and then we launched it. With the how-to guide, that was all done in HTML5, and we just embedded an audio player in there. So it was all done in HTML5, responsive design in-house.
And I think that's one of the things that, again, for us, one of the problems that we found in the past is that you go to a supplier and you say, we need something. They say, oh yeah, here's a box. It has everything you need inside of it. And we take it and we use it and we're done. For us, it was very, very important to get involved so that we can go back to any future suppliers and say, okay, so we know how it works, we know what's in there, we know what should be in there and what shouldn't, and we know how complex it is.
It comes back to listening to your learner again. I mean, once we created content, it was never ending. So for locations, when you click on, say, Slough Bath Road, you can find out all the contact details for the office. But when we showed our learners, they were like, how do I actually get to the office from the train station? So we then embedded Google Maps with GPS. So I think with the content, it's never ending to where you can stop the development. But again, it's listening to your learners and finding out what else do they need.
One of the interesting things that we've also added as a result of listening to them and to some of the managers we worked with is a QR scanner. So there's a QR scanner in here, so we can very easily deploy content which doesn't sit in the app, but connect it to something physical. Again, I think everything is around the learner. So yeah, thank you very much. And